So again, today's just kind of a training recap session on our supported decision making training. So I'll go through like all of the basics again, touch upon the different topics that we talked about in the other sessions, and most importantly, it'll provide you a time to talk with us, to talk through your stories, answer any questions you may have, and make you feel more prepared to be a potential co-trainer in the future with DBU on the topic of supported decision making.
So, Vivian, I have a question before we start.
Yes.
So, I think that it's good for all of the self advocates to think of yourself in the role of this presentation. Like, what would that be like, right, as she's going through it? But are people going to be doing only the story part, or some they're going to be doing some of the other parts too?
They're going to be doing some of the other parts as well.
Okay, so think about where you fit in, or how that would work for you as
Yeah.
you
Think
as Vivian
about,
goes through it.
just like Darlene was saying, think about where in the curriculum that you want to take a role in. I'll go through it, and like we have different sections for all of our curriculum, and maybe there's one section that you feel more confident in or feel more passionate about talking about, and that's your chance to be able to be a part of the curriculum and be the co-trainer as well as share your story and your lived experience as well. So just as a reminder, the Zoom controls, I think a lot of us have been on Zoom. Um, but just again, as a reminder, you should be able to unmute if you need to. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions. There's closed captioning available if you do need it. And then feel free to turn on and off your camera that we love, especially for our breakout groups later when we're talking in smaller groups. We would love to see everyone on camera if possible. Again, just starting off with the quote, supported decision making is a human right. Everyone should have the right to make choices with support and without the courts. So we just really want to emphasize that this is a right that everyone should have, no matter um, what types of supports that they may need to make the decisions that they do. Everyone has that right to make them. So then we'll kind of go over, these are the topics that we've gone over the last couple of sessions. So what is your role? What is your role in these trainings? And what is your place here at DBU attending these trainings and becoming a self-advocate trainer in supported decision making? Then we'll go into the different topics of our curriculum. So when you are going to go out and do trainings for other people, whether it's other self-advocates, family members, different professionals, most of our curriculum breaks down into these sections, which is risk of conservatorships, introduction to supported decision making and capacity building, as well as supported decision making and action. So those are the four main topics, but again, they do shift and change depending on the audience, and we'll go over that in the end today. Depending on the audience, maybe we're doing a training for teachers. The content that we share will be different than if we were teaching regional center staff. And so these are the four main parts of our general trainings. It can definitely change depending on the training that we get hired for. So, to briefly go over your role, just know that the power of your story, being here and being a co-trainer with DBU, it gives you the ability to share your perspective as a self-advocate. It gives you're able to impact your story, and you are really able to connect with the audience and add in your lived experience into the curriculum. And it's really powerful for you to be a part of teaching said curriculum, not just sharing your story and showing your expertise in this matter as well. And it allows you to share on why they should use supported decision making and to bring in real life examples as well. And again, similar to that first quote we talked about, everyone, regardless of their disability or what supports they need, has the right to make choices. We all have decision-making capabilities, and we all need support for different types of decisions, whether it's a small one, whether it's a large one. We all have the right to make these choices. So now to go into our curriculum a bit. And so this will also serve as kind of a recap on what we talk about in supported decision making as well and what it is. So Risks of conservatorship. So, the main talking points in this section is what is a conservatorship. We talk about how a conservatorship is a legal process in which someone is appointed by the court to take full conservatorship or guardianship over a person, usually a person with a disability. And in that case, it ends up with the loss of rights. And there are 7 different rights that someone can lose under conservatorship. Rights include to make decisions on their health care, to make decisions on their finances, decisions on where they live, the right to vote, who they can be friends with, and who they have friendships with or relationships with. We also talk a lot about the risks of conservatorships. Over half of the conservatorships in the US, the conservator is a stranger. And so they have little connection or a little understanding of the person who are they're really conserving. And so that goes into the idea of the illusion of protection. Conservatorship doesn't offer any extra protection if someone was to get into something with law enforcement or anything like that. And so it's just it's an illusion of protection, conservatorship is. Other things are also the cost of the conservatorship. Sometimes you may be placed under a public guardian, so it's a professional conservator, and they would have to get paid out of your money. Um, Other risks of conservatorship is the lack of a succession plan. Let's say your parents want to be your conservator, but then after they pass, they want the conservator to go on to a sibling. Um, there's no way to guarantee that the conservatorship will pass over to the sibling, and it can cause the conservatorship to be taken over by a professional. So, those are kind of our main talking points on conservatorships. And what you can talk about in these sections, adding into these talking points, is talking about how making choices is a human right, talking about dignity of risk and how it feels under a conservatorship, the feeling to lose your right to choose. I think those are some stories. I know Keisha last week was able to share a story about being in a conservatorship and feeling that she was in what she called a civil death and having no right to choose. Um, but again, there's so many different sections to this training, and maybe the risk of conservatorships or conservatorships is not something that you feel super familiar with or not as comfortable sharing about, and that's okay. But we just wanted to provide you with the example of this section here. The next section is Introduction to Supported Decision Making, which I think a lot of you will be interested in. So we'll talk more about it. So, what is supported decision making? It's the idea that you get to make decisions with the help of others, with what we like to call your circle of support. And so, who is in your circle of support? Your circle of support can be anyone you want to be in your circle of support. And what their role is to help you make decisions, help you understand the choices that you're making, understand all of the options, help you get accessible tools that you may need to understand all of these choices, to understand the pros and the cons, um, and to really be a person there again to support you. And so that's what supported decision making is all about. It's where you're in the driver's seat. Um, you're in the driver's seat and you get to make the final decision, but with the support and with the help of others. What does supported decision making look like? Can look different for everyone. Um, you get to choose when and where and how much support you want to get. For example, things like finances. Maybe you want a professional financial advisor to be your supporter for your finances. But maybe in the realm of healthcare, you want your mom or maybe an aunt who's also a nurse to be a part of your supported decision making circle in different areas. You also have the right to choose whether or not you want to choose someone to make decisions for you. And that's also your right to choose. So maybe for healthcare decisions, you want to choose a family member to make those decisions for you, and that's okay too. And so it looks different for everyone, and it can change. That's the beauty of it. That's the advantage to it. Let's say right now you don't feel like you want to elect someone to make the healthcare decisions for you, but down the road you want to start playing a bigger role in making your own healthcare decisions, and that's okay. It can change. Who you want to be your supporters can change, and how and when you want to receive support can change. And those are some of the advantages to supported decision making. Others include having this expanded circle of support. Whereas conservatorship, you rely on one person to make all the decisions for you. With supported decision making, we encourage you to have a large circle of support with different people playing different roles in your life. And people, your supporters can be people such as your family, your parents, siblings, but it can also include professional staff. Maybe it's your communication partner, um, communication specialist. It can be your caregiver. It can be anyone that you want it to be who you feel like understands how you communicate your choices and preferences best. And so, some notes on how you can incorporate your lived experience into these talking points and talking um, to this curriculum is sharing about how you practice supported decision making every day. Talk about who and how you choose who your supporters are. If you were able to watch the recordings where we did this training with Bella and William, in each of the slides, though they're still talking about the curriculum, they embed in their lived experience and they talk about how they choose their supporters and, and more like that. Our next section for the curriculum is on decision making. So, the main thing is how do you use supported decision making as a communication tool for others to understand what preferences and choices that you want to make, and how your supporters can support your communication preferences in order for you to make an informed decision. So, with supported decision making, it really falls onto how you're able to communicate the different decisions or different preferences you may have. And that can change. Talking about how you communicate your preferences can be as something as big and as formal as sitting down and making your person-centered plan, thinking about what goals you have. But it can also be as simple as talking through a point. It can also include facial expressions or gestures. Maybe it's using an AAC device or a choice board. How you want to communicate the choices you want to make can change, and that's how you can use supported decision making. And your supporters can help support these communication preferences. Supporters also help you in explaining the choices clearly and making sure you understand all the options available to you. And really working at that. So, whether this is making a pros and cons list for you, or maybe you really like visual aids. So, maybe it's sitting down and watching videos together about a decision you're going to make. Maybe it's reading different pamphlets so you're more informed on the different options. That's their role as a supporter to help you understand these choices. And the overall goal is to allow you to make informed decisions that are ultimately yours. Um, as we mentioned briefly earlier about dignity of risk, it's it's okay to make choices that might end up in a situation that's not exactly what you planned, and that's okay. Then is you can learn from these mistakes and you can go on and to make better decisions as you continue to practice your decision making skills. You can only get better at making different types of decisions. So, how you can implement your story into here is talk about how you express your preferences. Maybe you use a letterboard, AAC, different expressions at times. Other things you can do is to think about a time that supporters helped you make an informed decision. Um, so, one of the things that I think about is when I was a caregiver for someone, they had to make a decision about whether or not they wanted to go through getting their uh, tuberculosis tests. They're really afraid of needles, but in order to get, if they were able to get the tuberculosis test, they would be able to be admitted into this full internship program at the hospital. And so we sat down and we weighed our pros and cons about it, what would happen, how their internship would be limited if they didn't get the tuberculosis testing, the pros of being able to do it. And then we sat down and watched videos of so that they knew what to expect once they were able to go in and get their tuberculosis test. And so it's all about knowing how you communicate your preferences and how your supporters can help you make these decisions. And finally, the last section that we talk about in our supported decision making curriculum is supported decision making in action. And this is really where a lot of times our self advocates will take over this section and talk all about it, talking about exploring decision supports, how you can think about who and how much help you want from each of your supporters. We talk about supported decision making in healthcare. And the legal processes of maybe you want to use a power of attorney there, other different forms that you might have to fill out in order to get your supporter to assist you with your healthcare decisions. We talk about supported decision making in finances, maybe the use of a joint bank account, having your supporter fill out forms so they're a representative payee to assist you with um, Social Security insurance income. And then finally, in other sections, we talk about supported decision making and education. And a lot of self advocates have shared that education is a really big priority to them. So things about talking about being a part of the IEP process, helping make their goals in their education and making choices for themselves, whether it's going into higher education, graduating high school, and areas that they want to explore there. Other areas that we talk about using supported decision making in is in the right to vote. Sometimes self advocates want to share about how they're able to vote using support from their supporters, whether it's watching debates together, really thinking about each of the measures and um, different candidates. We also talk about supported decision making and interactions with law enforcement and other emergency services. What happens when you're in an emergency situation? What's the plan that you may have with your supporters to get you the help you need? Um, as well. And then we also think about supported decision making in other areas of our life, such as how we interact with regional centers and talking about IPP meetings. In the new IPP template, there's a whole section on decision making and circle of support. And so, talking about how you interact with them in those spaces there, as well as supported decision making and advocacy. Like Jesse was sharing a story earlier about needing a self advocate there. Supported decision making is a part of all of our lives, and we can think about ways that we can use it in our advocacy as well. And so this main part, it's adding your supported decision-making story. Give examples, scenarios of how you use your supported decision-making story, supported decision-making in your life. How do you advocate? And again, these can be decisions that you might think are small, whether it's something like what you're wearing today, what you're eating for lunch, but they can be much larger decisions about your life as well. And so next we'll go into kind of recapping how we can build out what your supported decision-making story is. So think about who you are. What are your motivations? What are your areas that you're most passionate about and making decisions in? In the story we shared in our first session, the example person, Sarah Lee, is really motivated to become more financially independent and to be able to make enough money so that they could raise their own lizard. And so those are the things that they were most passionate about, but they needed help making some of those financial decisions about their job. They needed help from their supporters to be able to drive to their place of employment. And so thinking about who you are and what motivates you to make the decisions that you do. Number two, think about what scenarios you use supported decision making in. Like I said earlier, we're using supported decision making every day of our lives, but think about the decisions that you want to share with others and decisions that you need help with, and think about when and where you use it, whether it's in the doctor's office, at the school, at your job. Maybe it's just day to day life. Um, and then finally, think about how do you use supported decision making? How do your supporters help you make the decisions? Is it using a pros and cons list? Is it helping you watch all the videos? Is it is it them listening to you explain all the different options? Maybe they're there to help answer all the questions that you may have. Um, what tools do you use to make sure your preferences are heard? And so again, think back. Do you use an AAC device? Do you use gestures or facial expressions? And it's important to choose supporters who understand how you communicate those preferences and those choices. And so think about that. And together, this becomes what your supported decision making story will look like and how you can implement it into the different curriculum pieces that we have. And then finally, think about what your audience is. Like I said earlier, the curriculum that we shared with everyone is our basic curriculum for parents and some self-advocates. And so think about your audience. Know your audience, change your impact. Know the demographics about of your audience, who's present in the room, whether it's parents, maybe it's self advocates, maybe it's educators, lawyers, regional center staff. Maybe with parents, you want to talk about more about ways to protect their child. But for self advocates, maybe you want to really hone in and talk about how this is a human right that we all have, and that we should all be able to make these decisions with whatever supports we need. Maybe with educators, it's talking about how you feel about in an IEP process, about how involved you are in making decisions for your education. Maybe for lawyers, it's about talking about what types of supports you need um, in a legal setting. And then for regional center staff, again, maybe it's talking about how you can be in charge of your IPP process, talking about um, maybe talking about the self-determination program, and talking about how you can be more involved and how you are in the driver's seat of these decisions. So again, continuing on about the different audience people, think about the relationship they have to the topic. Why do they care? What's their level of knowledge? What's their position? One thing that we like to talk a lot about is um, the education to conservatorship pipeline. A lot of educators talk about how conservatorship is the only way parents can stay involved in their child's education. So maybe if you're presenting to that type of audience, you want to share about how you can use supported decision making to stay involved in your child's education without having to use conservatorship, and talking about how supported decision making allows you to be better at making it your own decisions and to ensure that you're making decisions and preferences and the decisions that are in line with your preferences, so that you're doing things that you want, not what others want of you. And so I know this was rather quick just because we wanted to give kind of a brief outline, a quick recap of everything that we've covered in the last two sessions. But you do, if you want to watch the full sessions, both of the recordings should be up on our Google Classroom already. And so I just wanted to open it up to questions anyone may have about anything at all in regards to supported decision making, your role in these trainings, anything at all.
I just wanted to go back and touch base with you had talked about what to do in a case of an emergency. And one thing that we are working on for Jeremy is to have facial recognition on his iPad. So if something happens to staff, say a heart attack or something, and staff is not able to communicate, then Jeremy would be basically left alone. He does not use a phone. So we're setting up his iPad for facial recognition. We've already set up on his iPad on the home screen, once it recognizes his face, to call his mom. So we put his mom's picture under the FaceTime app. Then Jeremy now knows to touch his mom's picture. It will automatically call her. And if he's FaceTiming her without staff, then she knows that there's an emergency. So that's one thing that we're working on Jeremy for his independence. And we're still setting up the facial recognition, but it's really important, I think, for other friends that are nonverbal to have a way to communicate, to tell someone that there's an emergency if they don't have the ability to use a phone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's also what the tech guy is working with us to do. just to set up Jeremy's iPad. So
Hey, Jamie Lee, send me that tech guy's contact information.
sure, I'll
I need to
send
have
it
him
to
at
you.
Communication Access Connect.
Yes, so he actually this is his field of expertise.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember
uh,
talking about him, but I just never
his name is
grasped
Gil,
it. So
and
Gil, that's right.
so we're doing staff change right now. Jennifer's just now coming in. Before I leave,
All right.
I will
I'll
send
get
it
it from
to
you.
you, Darlene, and then I'll see you at Typers tomorrow. And thank
Okay.
you. So Jennifer's taking over now. So
Mhm.
I'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:30, Jeremy. Okay. Hi. I'm fine. Notes are posted. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I think that's such a good story, and I think it's so important to have that plan, whether your supporters are near or far, in case an emergency happens.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So I wonder if Vivian, if you go back to the beginning and maybe we just talk about the different sections that you said this would be a good thing for you. Like some of the beginning of the presentation, you're talking about what is supported decision making, right? So what is conservatorship? What is did you don't have to actually have had a big gigantic story to share about it. It's just maybe feel comfortable, like I want to tell that story. I want to be the one talking about what conservatorship is. And I don't know if anybody in this group is conserved or has had this conversation with their support team or family, if they would want to share that would be something that you could say, hey, I want to do this part too. Like Keisha would be a good person based on her story last week, right? Where she has a story about conservatorship and then getting out of conservatorship, that kind of thing. What are some other, what's the next slide there, Vivian? Okay, this is the good one. Does anybody have an interest in sharing uh, from an advocacy point of view? Like it's your right, it's your you should have the opportunity to say what you need to say. You should have the opportunity to make a mistake and get support to fix it, and to bring in support for yourself. And what it might feel like if people are overstepping and not listening to you. That kind of information would fit here if anybody has that in their repertoire of life skills, life experiences. No? Okay, let's see. Maybe if we do this, how can we do this? Is everybody, I see that people have their cameras off. Are you available though? Like, I'm wondering if you could think about what, where do you think you might fit in? Do you think you just have a good story you want to share, or do you actually want to teach a slide? What do you think, Justin?
I'm in between. I wouldn't mind teaching a slide, but I also wouldn't mind being able to go into not being heard and the whole concept of me having my own rights.
Okay. All right. So, and is that something you just feel passionate about, or do you have an example story of where that didn't work out for you or where people challenged you on that?
It's kind of something I feel passionate about
Okay.
because um I grew up in a family that was very loving and supportive, but at the same time they were a lot of the decisions they made for me I think were very fear-based, so they didn't give me a lot of control.
Oh, that's a great piece to put into a story.
Yeah.
Um, about I love that fear-based concept, because I think it's very common for all of
Mhm.
us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about your kids. Um, okay, that was awesome. Um, all right. How about Jesse? You were raising your hand, I think, in that concept too. Do you ring true on that?
Yeah, I was actually doing the sign language for same.
Oh, okay. I just saw your hand waving.
Yeah, I was just feeling
You
that.
were doing the same,
But
yeah.
yeah, Justin, what you were saying really resonated with me in terms of the parents making decisions on the fear base. Because I've actually had a conversation with my parents about the way that they raised me, and that one of the things that they mentioned was that, and that they didn't want to see me fail. And then the point that Darlene was presenting is, if you're not allowing, it's the whole point of supported decision making is to allow them to fail, because if you don't fail, you don't learn how to be able to develop the skills.
Right.
Okay. That's exactly right for everybody else. I don't know why
Yeah.
it can't be for you as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I was constantly, and so at the end of the day, I would be feeling like a rebel and an outlier of like trying to be heard by my parents and trying to get my foot in the door of allowing myself to have the opportunities to develop myself and to develop the skills, but with the parents having that fear of seeing their child fail, it's it ends up really being a backwards thinking mindset.
Hmm.
Mhm. It backfires on you.
Yeah. To me, it was always like I was always made out to be the idiot and not the smart one.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, had they let me, figure some stuff out, I think they would have seen, oh, he has some smarts. He's gonna learn from his mistakes and
Mhm.
gonna move forward.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Jeffrey and Connie, if you guys want to jump in, right? And Jeffrey, if you want to type it, even you can put it in the chat. That'd be all right too. Do you guys? I don't know, Davine. I'm not trying to take over, but I had these thoughts while you were talking. Um, do the people in this session? Do you have a group that you identify as your support team, as your go-to people?
Yes.
Okay, a little bit maybe. So if you do, and I know Jeremy that you do, um, if you do, how did you get to be how did you get these people in your life, and how do you what makes them the people you identify as your support team? Like, did you grow up together? Did you meet these people and just they stayed around in your life? Was it a teacher, family member?
I guess for myself, it kind of fluctuates, because I have some friends that I trust and that I'm able to have support, but I also know that some of them are better at supporting me in certain categories. But then it's also like with myself, I have some difficulty being able to rely on my parents, because they they are more of passive listeners, and I get the sense that they're always thinking of the response as opposed to actually listening to what I'm saying. And that kind of has impacted my ability to ask for help as well.
Oh, now I think I'm talking to my daughter now. That's what she says about me. Um, um, so, okay. So you have different people for different purposes,
Yeah.
different conversations. Makes
Mhm.
sense. All right. Because I think that that'll come up often in the trainings is people are going to say, well, where do you get this supported team? Where do you
Yeah.
find these people? You know? And
Mhm.
so for you all to be able to identify, well, and some people might be saying my family, it's my family because they know me best. And some people might be saying it's my professional team because they let me be myself,
Mhm.
um, and it might be a combo. But I think that question's going to come up often in the training, especially from the families. They're going to say, where do I find these support people?
Mhm.
And I think the other question that will come up often in the trainings is, um, do you have to have these? This sounds like a silly question, but it will come up. Do you have to have these people sign a contract with you? Do you have to meet with them regularly? People make everything a big deal, right? And so they're going to ask that. And so being able to respond to that question and say whatever it is that you do. I mean, I think people can do it casually, but we do have forms to fill out if you want to.
Mhm.
But that question will come up often around the idea of support teams.
I haven't um had it in writing, but I feel like if the parents are concerned about it, it's better to have it signed and in writing. That way, if something does come up, then they'll be able to have it, they'll have the written legal obligation
It's
and
identified.
yeah, it becomes less messy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Good point. Trying to think of other things that are going to come up in these trainings, Vivian, as we think about what people always talk about. Um, oh, I know one that comes up. Another one is, what if there's a question that you don't feel comfortable answering, like or you don't feel comfortable advocating for yourself? What do you do? Like if I don't know what it would be, but let's say somebody told you you had some rare viral infection and you had to go through this big medical procedure that no one knows anything about anyways, but how would you handle that? What do you do? How do I make sure my person understands what that means in their life? Those big things we call big decisions. What do you do if you don't understand or if you don't know what the people are talking about that are asking this of you? Anything unique that you do? You ever had that happen?
Um,
No.
if anything, that serious happen, but um what I have had to do is say, I need to consult with such and such before I give you an answer.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
that's a great way to put it, Justin. I think sometimes we feel like we need to make a decision right away.
Mhm.
But
Right.
we are allowed to, unless you're in an emergency room and it's an emergent situation where, um, we have the time to think about and take a pause, and think about those decisions, um, with
Get a
other.
second opinion. Maybe that's your go-to. I'm going to get a second opinion. And that allows you to walk away and get some more information, right?
Hmm.
I would also say it's okay to be curious and to ask a lot of questions because that way then and to maybe have if to have your support you with asking the questions as well. Because even if
Okay,
it's
that's a great thing to put up. That's a great thing to bring up. Like
because
maybe
even
your support person helps. Yeah.
yeah, because even if it's a simple question,
Hmm.
the answer could lead to more questions. And it's all about inquiry.
That's
So
right.
then they're able to, because that's another way of decision making is you're not going to be able to make a final decision if you don't have all of the information.
That's right. I love how, Justin, how you put in there too that you haven't had that big of an important question, situation come up. I think that when we talk about supported decision making and we talk about conservatorship, we start thinking that all these big, gigantic questions are coming your way all the time. And the reality is, it's not that often that you get these big, gigantic questions in your life, right?
Mm-mm.
You got to be prepared for them. But it's not like every day someone's saying, what are you going to do about this? How do you want to spend your money this way? It's usually just going to the grocery store um, or out to lunch. You're not figuring out how you're going to buy a car or a house or pay your rent, right? You got that figured out one time, you're done talking about it for a little while.
Huh?
Um, so I think that's a good reminder for people, for you guys to bring up too, is that you're prepared, but it doesn't happen every day where you got to have these big consult meetings happening every day of your life, right?
Right.
And then
Mm.
also, like to Darlene's point, some of these big decisions or big meetings we think about are scheduled. Like I think
Yeah.
a lot of times we think like a doctor's office, you have the appointment scheduled. You have time beforehand to do what Jesse was saying. Sit down with your supporters. Think about what questions you might want to ask at the doctor's office beforehand. Um,
Hmm.
these big decisions, again, aren't usually ones that happen just out of nowhere.
I think the other thing that comes up all the time is, what about is there paperwork I need to do for this? So that'll come up in the trainings, right?
Yeah.
And we all have different ways of thinking about paperwork, but if you have a personal story like, oh, I have so and so has power of attorney over my health care or my money, or I don't have any paperwork, and whatever your personal story is, that's going to come up as a question in a training. I'm pretty positive.
I think even paperwork, things like HIPAA authorization form, someone like my grandma, who's a lot older, um, can't always make these decisions for himself, or she's not as reliable as answering her emails or anything, standing things like that. And so, like we sign a HIPAA authorization form so that we're able to be included in her healthcare emails from her doctors and things like that. So we can help support her to make her healthcare decisions and for her to stay informed about her healthcare too. So those are some other forms that we think about as well. Um,
Yeah, people will ask about that for sure. Um, what else did they come up with as questions, Michaela or Vivian? I'm trying to think of all the things that these are the opportunities where you guys can get involved and say, here's how I do it. That's much better than like me saying, here's how you do it. It's when you guys say, here's how I do it, right?
I think a question that from different trainings I've done so far, people ask a lot is what types of supports or aids do you need from your supporters to help you make an informed decision? Like how do you know that you're able to make an informed decision? Do you use pro and cons lists? Do you like how are you, what is that process like for you to understand that you're making an informed choice?
I guess for myself, I mentally go through a pros and cons list of, well, does will this benefit me? In what way? And also, yeah.
I think,
So yeah,
that's
definitely
good
pros and
to
cons.
bring up if that is when you do,
Uh-huh.
because even if you have limited communication, forgot to tell my husband I'm not going to see him till tomorrow. He's like, oh, see you tomorrow. Okay. Anyways, um, so I think to say, like for people who aren't speakers or who don't have really strong communication skills, pros and cons lists are something many, many people can do. even with limited communication. So if that's something that you use, for example, Jesse, I mean, I use them all the time, but to bring that into the picture, that I just start making a mental pros and cons list, because we can say, okay, your person has limited communication skills. He, though, could participate in a pros and cons list. That's a choice, one or
Mhm.
two, right? Um, so that's a great strategy that so many people can use.
I think, I mean, we kind of talked about this a little when we were talking about making decisions in general, but something Vivian and I have been talking about a lot lately that we're trying to incorporate into some of the stuff we're making is like what to do when you disagree with your supporters. And I think that we did kind of talk about this, like when we talked about like parents not wanting kids to take risks and stuff. But just like how you handle that when your parent is your supporter or your sibling is your supporter and they have an interest in you being safe and happy and successful, but you want to make a different decision than them. I think that's something that is like would be really helpful for parents and self-advocates to hear, like how you navigate like being like having a supporter, but still making sure it's your decisions that are being made. I don't really know how to phrase the question, Vivian, but that's something we've been like that would be good for some self-advocate input.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like, Jesse, you've had some opportunity to kind of sort through that.
Because I did the speakers bureau, and then I wanted some certain tests done at the hospital, and my doctor was on vacation, so I went to the emergency room, and I basically said, "Give me X, Y, and Z, and then you're done." And they did.
Great. That's good. Yeah.
Although they were like, "We want you to stay in the hospital," and I'm like, "No, I don't need that. I just need these tests."
And they did it, though.
Yeah,
All right. And then you advocated for the fact that I don't want to stay in the hospital.
right.
Okay, good. Perfect. What about like what Michaela's talking about, in the sense of, what if you, what's it, I think, how can we say it? Talking maybe a little, if you have these experiences, talking a little bit about being uncomfortable with what people are starting to say. Like if your parent or your advocate is starting to say that you should do blah blah blah, the shoulds, you should do da da da, and then like that brings up a level of uncomfort for most of us, right? People talking about what we should do.
Yes.
um
Mhm.
and so maybe sharing like what that feels like, and how did you get through that with your family or your advocate, to say, okay, but I don't want to do that. I It's hard to say that when you're uncomfortable in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Is that kind of what you were thinking about, Michaela?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think other things to think about in a similar vein too is I've heard a lot of self-advocates share stories about feeling like there's a lot of talking about them without them. And
Hmm.
then what do you do in that type of scenario? Maybe you're at a doctor's office and the conversation is getting overwhelming, but everyone is just talking about you, but not to you, not about you, but not to you. And so what are ways that you deal with that situation, and how do you talk to your supporter to say that this is not, again, like what Darlene is saying, maybe this is not something that you're comfortable with, you want a more active role, or maybe we need to take a pause so that I can understand my options better so I can be a more active participant in this conversation, or what are some things that you do in that realm too?
Something that I've done with my parents is I've told them, "This is my life, this is my decisions, and this will impact me. I appreciate your concern and your opinions, but I need to make this decision on my own accord because otherwise I feel like decisions are being made for me and I'm not having a say in my own life."
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
I just had a similar conversation with my dad because he just went through his second hip replacement surgery, and when they do any kind of surgery, they make you do all this stuff, and to prep, like get all your tests done and all that. And my dad was like, I'm not sure with all the tests I've had done and what they found on me, I'm not sure you're getting the best health care. And I'm like, I'm kind of dealing with something along those lines right now. But I'll let you know if anything major comes of what I'm dealing with. Um, I need to, I basically need to deal with it on my own. I don't need you going into my medical record and finding out stuff and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you have to, yeah, it's, we can kind of overstep ourselves, right? And so especially as a parent, when your opinion becomes too directive, then like Jesse kind of mentioned, you start breaking down and that you're not trusting and that you're going to listen anymore. So we have to kind of put boundaries on our families sometimes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But don't do it to spite yourself, Justin. That's what I say. But I hear you. Yeah. I think these are all really good, real conversations. Yeah.
I think having self advocates talk about boundary setting with their supporters is a very important thing. Like Darlene was saying, I think a lot of times people think, like, especially at transition age, most people may look to their family to be their kind of natural circle of support as someone they've always grown up around and falling back on that. But as you turn older, how do you set that boundary of, yes, I understand, like Jesse was saying, like, you're trying to protect me, you're trying to help me, but I need to make some of these decisions on my own. And it's okay if I mess up. It's okay if I don't know all the right answers right now. And I think um, that's an empowering thing to have that power and to have that say.
That makes me think, and I always go to this because I come from education, um, as a group that I spend most of my time with. Um, I think for parents especially, and even the young people, to hear, how did you get this level of confidence for yourself? You know, all of us learn through trial and error, like you say, risks and failures and all that kind of thing. But can you think about how your education influenced that for you? Or maybe squashed it and you had to like take it and do it yourself? Maybe you noticed that. I don't know how it came to be, but you're both, especially the two of you who are speaking in here mostly. Jeffrey, you're a very confident person, and Jeremy, you are as well. And Connie, you sound like you are. But what was it like? Can you think of being a smaller person, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old? Did you have situations where you said, I'm going to take care of this myself, or I did this and it didn't work out so well for me, and then I had to learn from it? Any scenarios like that?
Well, one of the things for me is that in addition to being physically disabled, I'm also visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got into high school, everybody was like, how's he going to do the higher level math that's required to graduate high school?
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom and dad found out about this program that's all done on a graphics calculator, which I could manipulate and possibly see in some different ways. Um, but the program, since it was a pilot program, didn't really pan out in the time that was supposed to pan out in it. I actually had to deal with it for the 4 years that I was in high school instead of the 3 that they said I'd be done in.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly it was I had a lot of teachers basically saying, he's saying that he can't see this. I have no idea how to teach him. So basically, he's taking up a lot of my time, and we need to put him on like home tutoring because obviously he needs more help than I can give him.
Mm.
And so then my mom basically said, well, that's not going to bar him from sitting in the class. So he's still going to show up in class and see what he can get out of it there. But yeah, we'll have him home tutored, and that'll be who will basically give him the exams or basically teach him the concepts. But he's gonna sit in class to try to get what he needs to get.
That's perfect. I think that's a great example of how knowing I mean, you knew what the criteria was for graduating high school, and you didn't bring it down just because there was a challenge. Like you didn't say, oh, okay, then I guess we can't do that. Right? You said, no, we're going to figure out a way that we are going to do that.
Right.
And that's a good example of that. And and then that's an important thing because it's really easy to say, he doesn't read, and so I don't know that he's really, is probably not gonna be able to take language arts, and then all of a sudden now you're not doing anything, right? It's real easy to walk away from the hard things sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did they end up
Anything?
getting, like, so you got a home tutor for math? Did they end up getting any other sort of like accessible tools to help you with math in school?
No, so basically what it was because I was just trying to listen to the instructor in school. It was mostly me having someone take notes for me. And I basically sat in without an aide for that class because um, my aides and stuff were meant to help me if I was actually working with the class. So it was basically me trying to understand in both ways, either with the tutor and the classroom, the concepts, so that then I would be able to get a good grade when the tutor was like required to
Hmm.
my exam results.
Wow. Well, math is a hard one to accommodate,
Yeah.
and it really is. I mean, I'm not good at math, but I've tried to figure out how to make accommodations for math. I'm like, this is tough. Language is much easier. Yeah. Um, did you ever? I'm just looking for storylines that can come up that can be really powerful for families of all ranges, right? So, did you? And maybe maybe none of you. Although Jeffrey, I know you've had this story. I hope you're listening, Jeffrey, because this is something you could contribute for sure. Um, and Jeremy, I think you too. But um, where people just decided like that you could just have the functional curriculum or the easy curriculum rather than learning educational things. I don't know if Jesse or Justin, if you've ever had that in your education, but I do know you, Jeffrey, had that in your education as an elementary student and a middle schooler, where the school system was advocating for life to become simpler rather than educating.
Well, for me, what was interesting is that my mom put me in like pre-kindergarten and special ed kindergarten, so I did kindergarten twice.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, one of the special kindergartens I was in, that's where I met my visual consultant for the visually impaired, who ultimately ended up following me all the way to high school graduation. Um, and one of the things that she did, which actually is how I got separated out and discovered that I could be mainstreamed, is that with the right setup, she was able to start teaching me how to read and recognize sight words. So
Okay.
so then it was like, oh, if he can read, he should be able to be educated.
Mm.
And so then after that point, we started getting me into mainstreaming, and that's and because my parents let that happen, that was a good thing, because as we've been talking about here, I think it's when you're in special ed all the way and you hit 18 is when they start handing you the conservatorship paperwork.
That's right.
My parents never got that because I was mainstreamed.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think part of what we really at DVU are realizing is that we got to have this conversation with the younger family parents, right? They need to hear from you guys about just that, Justin and Jesse, if that's your story as well, that I didn't have that conversation because I ended up being mainstreamed, and I only ended up being mainstream because we just kept constantly looking for ways that I could do these things, um, or however the stories go. But if a family waits and does special ed and they just keep buying into the, well, he can't do and she doesn't know, and um, this is how we do it here mentality, then when you get to be 18, yeah, you're not going to be ready to be in. I mean, it's going to be scary. So we have to start with the parents advocating from the get go at the very beginning that no, we're going to keep learning here. We got to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, and especially difficult part about that is that for the parent, for the parents and for the special education system is that it's so hard for the parents have to advocate so much to get the child into special education.
Hmm.
Like with for my story, I went to a I started off it wasn't until I got into like fourth grade that I went to a school for individuals with learning disabilities because also I was I was dealing with childhood oral apraxia,
Hmm.
and so I had delayed speech, but it was through therapy, both in school and outside of school, that I was developing the skills for me to be able to speak properly.
Hmm. Yeah.
But also the therapy in school took away academic time for me to be able
Hmm.
to learn. So I would be advocating for myself. Not this class. This is one of my favorite classes. Please don't take me from this one. Take me from PE. Please get me out of the physical
Yeah.
education stuff. Get
Yeah.
me out of the but yeah, I learned to advocate through there, but also I realized that after graduating from high school, thankfully I never had the conservatorship papers ever laid out for me. But
Hmm.
after high school, I realized that Darlene, you were mentioning about how sometimes the schools set up the easy curriculums to allow the students to be able to just kind of to fall in line and to graduate. But what I discovered is that sure I graduated, but they didn't prepare me for the next future steps.
That's right. Those would be great stories to share. You have stories about how you
Yeah.
didn't feel prepared. That'd be perfect.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, and so it wasn't until and so then my whole college journey turned into I mean that's my college story is a whole other story within itself. I won't dive into that one because that goes deep. But I realized what I really wanted to do was to get into education, because at the second college that I went to, I ended up seeing a documentary called Waiting for Superman, and it talked about the Los Angeles education system and how it's, I think they were mentioning how it's the second largest school district, and yet they're failing the students, not just within the special education, but overall in general.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great, I think those are it's another good piece to put in this year-long training we're gonna have to do. No, it's just feeling there's so much information you guys are bringing out. Um, it's like you said, Jesse, once you start asking questions, then you have more questions.
Yeah, it's all
That's
about
exactly
curiosity.
that's where my brain's going. Yeah. Um, for sure. I remember Jeremy, Jennifer, are you there, Jennifer, with Jeremy? Jeremy, tell me, can I tell the story about your Spanish teacher in college?
Yes.
Okay, so this is how silly it was for Jeremy. He was in a community college and he was going to take a Spanish class. I'm pretty sure it was community, maybe it was high school. I don't know. You could tell me if I'm wrong. But anyways, he did take a Spanish class, but Jeremy's a non-speaking person. And so the Spanish teacher was telling Jeremy he couldn't be in the class because he couldn't speak Spanish out loud. And and I'm like, he doesn't speak English out loud either. But what are you talking about? But she was really having a hard time with the fact that he was going to be in her Spanish class and he wasn't going to be speaking Spanish. And she could not understand that he didn't speak anybody's language. He's non-speaking.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a barrier for the other classes he was taking, but for her, it was a very big deal. Um, so I think reading teachers do that too, because reading teachers measure on fluency, like how fast you can read the words on the page, which actually, I mean, I'm sure it's helpful, but it doesn't like the be all of reading. Um, and so if you have apraxia, you don't read so well, right? You don't speak so fast. All of that happens. And so then they say, well, he can't read. You're like, no, he can't read fast. He can, you know, out loud to you. So those kinds of barriers that you can just go totally derailed with this kind of thing happening in your life, right? Now, Jeremy, you didn't get derailed because your family and everybody supported you to say, no, he is going to do these things and here's how it's going to look. But we had to do that. Yeah. These are really great stories.
I would believe that would happen at a community college, because I have a similar story about my community college experience at Valley College,
Oh yeah.
where I was taking a health class and it was being run by the football coach.
Of course,
And yeah, naturally.
yeah.
So being the football coach that he is, he doesn't believe in disabilities or that people should have special accommodations. And so I fought with him all semester, where I had to go to the disability office, tell them the situation. And so they finally got him to give me the accommodations. And after the class ended, we ran into each other out in the yard. This was Los Angeles Valley College. And he stopped me and told me that he apologized and told me that I was one of the brightest students in his class, and that I taught him a very valuable lesson
Awesome.
of allowing accommodations, because you truly
That's
don't know what your students are going through and what they need to support themselves. And if you're going to deny it, then you're not just hurting the student, you're hurting your class.
And what the student's capable of.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, and like Darlene said, like it's good that you had at different points in both your stories and Jeremy's story that you had parents or somebody else who could advocate for you, but also it shouldn't be this way, but you know it's this way because this is the life that you've had to lead where you have to advocate for yourself all the time. So if you were not confident, if you didn't understand the system, if you hadn't had people show you how to do that for yourself when you were younger, which is what's so important for us to talk to younger kids, maybe you wouldn't have been confident enough to go to the disability office over and over and get what you needed from that class, you know?
Yeah.
I remember I have this guy, he was on my caseload that he was a very spunky guy. And he, in first grade, and when he knew he was going to second grade, he's fully included, going to second grade, he told his mom, he said, well, I need to make an appointment with the principal because I need to tell her which teacher I need for second grade. And so he, as a first grader, went to the principal and said, this is the teacher I need, and this is why I need her. Well, she's going to be, just scoping out the second. He was planning ahead. And then that's just what he did each year was he would voice, he would size up the teachers and think about which one's going to be able to be a good match for me. And he would go and advocate. He's, some people have that in them, right? But I think we have to, his mom could say, no, 6-year-olds don't do that, and then we would have squashed him, right? But she said, okay, we're making an appointment. So we got to foster it and support it all together, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think especially with what I hear from people in special education sometimes is you're not allowed to not know the answer. And I think that happens a lot and that stifles a lot of growth that you can have happen when you say that you don't know. But now these are the steps I'm going to take so that I do know. Asking questions and feeling the confidence, I even know for myself, right? Sometimes it's hard to be able to ask for help from others. And I think you need to build that confidence of knowing that it's okay to not know all the answers and to seek help from others to get that as well. And I think that's like a big thing that we hear a lot in special education that no, you can't say no. You can't, I don't know is not the right answer as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a big deal. Especially in this, if you come from a special education background, when you're in a special education class, that a lot of times people don't get to not know things. They're just told to try again, or let me just give you this many choices then, and maybe you'll see the answer. There's no actual exploration or instruction going on sometimes. Yeah.
Can I ask just a general question about DBU's trainings?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you guys offer any training on how to advocate for accessibility.
Well, sometimes we talk about that in the Communication Access Connect sessions that we do once a month on Tuesday nights at 4 or Tuesday afternoons at 4. It's on the third Tuesday of the month, and it's called Communication Access Connect. But a lot of times we're talking about advocating for accommodations because that fits in the same picture. So that we have those conversations. Like I'm gonna get a hold of Jeremy's tech guy and have him. I'm gonna see if I can get him to volunteer to speak for us one day because it would be great for everybody to pick his brain. He comes up with really creative ideas. And so in that sense, we do that. I mean, it's all about advocacy. So if you did Justin, you did the speakers bureau, right?
Yes.
So do you go to the LCC meetings on the Thursdays once a month? You get that information?
Justin,
No,
you just did the most recent Speakers Bureau training, right?
I did like probably the one before the most recent one.
The second one? Okay.
So I know that before they weren't like, Darlene, remember when we did the LCC meeting, they hadn't added all of our people to the invite list. But I
Okay,
added
so
everybody before the last LCC. So Justin, you could look and see maybe if you got a spam email or something, but I'll send you an email with the invitation to it because you can go to LCC now and it's once a month.
Okay.
And there, again, different topics each month. But that's where it would come in that way for sure.
Just as
Because
a reminder, what was the LCC?
It's on the fourth Thursday of the month, and it's at
Mhm.
4 o'clock. And it's the I can never remember the name of the
Because
LCC
they
though.
changed it, but it's leadership, community.
Leadership,
Collaborative,
leadership,
right?
It used to be collaborative, which
uh,
is what I was told I got here, but it is community.
commu-
Leadership,
community,
community connect. Well, and I'll put
leadership,
the
community
link in
connect.
here. I'll put the link in here right now so that you and Justin and Jeremy could register if you want to, and it'll send you reminders, but you're also on the email list for it now.
okay,
Okay.
perfect.
And so that's another opportunity that we have that are kind of topic oriented. This month, for example, in LCC, we're going to have Judy Mark, our director, speak on how bills get passed and the process that it goes through so that people can think about where they fit into that process. Because a lot of
Ooh.
times, you might not get involved, but maybe at the very end, DVU might be putting out a blast saying, hey, we need you all to email in or something like that but that's all calculated, right? And so Judy's going to explain it all to everyone so that you can know when to get involved, like in a really committed way. When do we need you to get the most involved? We want you to always be involved, but sometimes we really need you to be involved at a certain point.
Mhm.
So she's going to explain that whole thing to us this month. That's this
Okay.
month's. Um, and then, but in Communication Access Connect, we're going to be talking about getting assessments. So how do you get assessments in the community? What should you expect from your assessments? Through DOR or through Regional Center or through your insurance companies or different education settings, of course. And then what should you expect from them? That's the topic this month for CAC.
Okay.
So things fit, it can fit. But if you ever have big needs, then connect with us and we'll see if we can help you out.
Yeah, because I'm just always wanting to go to places and advocate for, like, accessible restrooms and or accessible areas to be changed in, et cetera, et cetera. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how do
Mm-hmm.
you advocate for that? And I'm like, well, DVU has all these trainings. I wonder if they would offer a training in that kind of aspect.
Okay. Well, another thing we're going to do, Michaela's putting this together, is we're going to get all the Speakers Bureau people together at the end of the month, the 20th or something like that, I think. 27th. And so that's where we're going to talk about things like this, Justin, and see what everybody's got going on. That's a great topic. Maybe we can put that into the LCC if it's not already on the list meetings. Yeah. So lots of opportunities to get
Is
more
there
informed.
going to be an email coming out about the 27th?
Yes.
Today or tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
If I
Yeah.
don't get it, can I contact
Absolutely.
somebody?
Yeah, contact me.
Michaela.
Michaela. Okay.
And I'm the one
Yeah.
who's been emailing you for these meetings, so you could reply to one of those.
Okay, cool.
Well, Vivian, what else? What should people expect next?
I think, what do you expect next? Michaela, if you have, I think I have the post survey handy.
I do. And then so if you get when you get this in an email, since only a few of you are here, you don't have to do it again. So now that that's over and the few people who needed a second session had one, there's an email going with certificates and like next steps, including what Vivian has.
Yeah, so some next steps include, like we said before, these trainings are a part of our grant to educate people on supported decision making. But in order to continue to make our trainings better, and to make sure that people are like learning something from these trainings, we do have some pre and post training surveys. So we ask that you help fill those out just so that we know. Other next steps is on our end, we're developing a website all on supported decision making. And we want to be able to feature people's stories, their supported decision making stories, how they use it in their life, why supported decision making, and having and being able to use supported decision making is so impactful for your life. So we also have a survey for you to just share your story. And again, you'll have the option in the form to for it to remain anonymous if you want it to be. So like if you want to share your story, Jesse, but you don't want people to know that it's you, Jesse, we can make you like someone else. Like we can put in a fake name if that's what you want as well. But we have those two of the main things, and Michaela is working on doing certificates for this session as well. After that, uh, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be training parent advocates as well who want to learn more about supported decision making to be co-trainers. And then from there, once we get training opportunities, so when other organizations contact us for different trainings, we'll begin reaching out to people who have completed the series to come on and be a co-trainer with us. And a lot of times, like what we're thinking about how we select people is what the big thing is where you're located. If you're going to be close to an area that we're training, that plays a big factor. So we don't have to like fly you somewhere super far away. And just staying involved and, you participating here today, like makes a really big difference in us seeing your passion for the topic to know. And then what to expect if you're selected for a training. We'll usually do a session with me and you and whoever other co-trainers, maybe Darlene is training with us that day, maybe it's Michaela, maybe it's another self-advocate. We'll do kind of like a pre-training run through and
Planning session.
Yes, a planning session. I was like, the word is not coming to me today. A little planning session to kind of think about where in the curriculum you wanna talk about, and then what other places I can talk about. And it's very much we work together to figure it out, and I want you all to be able to talk to the points that you're most passionate about, and whatever is kind of all the points that you don't feel as comfortable talking about or not as passionate about, like I can fill in those places. Um, we want these trainings to be very self-advocate driven. But yeah, Michaela has posted the training surveys there, and then she'll be in contact via email with the certificates. But if you ever have any questions, feel free to email either Michaela or I for that. And then I think Michaela is also working on, if you are in the bureau already on the website, updating it so that it says that supported decision making is one of the topics that you're comfortable talking about.
Yep. And then I have everybody's zip code, but so Jeremy's in San Diego. And Jesse,
Yes.
you're in the LA area, and Justin, you're in the Bay.
Yeah,
No,
babe.
Jeff.
Yes.
No, Jesse's in the Bay.
Yeah, Justin.
Yes, Jeremy.
A lot of
San
J's.
Diego.
And Jeffrey's in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And Connie, I think, is in the Bay Area.
I've got Connie's zip code right here. Let me look.
Okay. Trying to remember.
Yeah, San Francisco.
Okay. Oh, good. I remember.
So that's cool because you guys are spaced out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm down here in San Diego. We don't do a ton of stuff in DVU in San Diego, but we have a couple things coming up. Most of our stuff happens in LA. And then I know for sure our supported
Or the
decision
Bay Area.
conference is in the Bay Area. Yeah. So
Mhm.
Which conference?
there's no information out about it yet. It's like very new, but in September we'll be having a supported decision making conference in Oakland.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I think it'll be supported decision making and as well as some self-determination.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh my God, I want to go to that.
We'll be sure to let you know with plenty of time.
You might be speaking at it, Justin.
Oh wow. Okay.
You never know, huh?
All right. Well, we can stay on for a little bit more if anyone else has any other questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining all today. And you guys gave such great answers and great questions for us to think about too. A lot of us asking questions, you asking questions back, and I think it was a really great session to hear from everyone. So just wanted to thank everyone for that.
Not a problem.
Okay, bye, Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
I'm out. Cool.
I guess I have a question for Michaela. And I'm not sure whether I'm on the speakers bureau since I attended the training. Is it possible? How can I check and see? And if I'm not on there,
So I don't
could
see you
you?
on there right now. Let me send you the link for putting yourself on there.
Yeah, thank you. Because I think I was trying. I was
Yeah,
on the
so
verge of
that's what I
doing
was gonna
that,
say,
then
is we've been having a
it
lot of
reset.
trouble with the form. So if you try again and you can't submit it, what you can do is send me your answers,
Mhm.
and I can just load you on there by myself. Because we're still having
Okay.
some issues with the form, okay? But let me give you the link to the form again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Justin and Jeffrey are in there.
Yep.
Where is the link? Trying to find the right link, sorry.
It's all right.
Here we go. There we go. Okay, so right here. And yeah, so while you're filling it out, like especially while you're writing your personal statement, either
Yeah.
write it in like another document or make sure you copy paste it so that if it doesn't save, you don't have to do it again, okay? And you can
Okay.
send it to me.
Yeah, perfect. I can do it all in a Google Doc just in
Perfect.
case.
I'll make it easier for you if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Such a positive statement.
But so what?
Such a positive statement. You better make it easier for you in case it doesn't work, because it just might not work.
Yeah.
We'll just
The
plan for
site
it
works.
out.
It's just that entering it in is a bit.
Yes, the site
is-
works fine.
Yeah, it's just funky to get the info in. We can't figure out quite why. Because usually it does work, and then sometimes it doesn't. So we don't know why.
Great.
Technology has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
It's
I
true.
know. Yeah. If it was consistently not working, that would be easier to figure out.
Yeah. Hmm.
Awesome. You guys will get an email from me shortly.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming. We'll see
you.
all of you guys soon, okay?